Tonight, I want to take you to the far side of the British Empire, but not by the easy route, and not through the bright, convenient dream most people now attach to Australia. There will be no holiday postcards at first, no sparkling beaches, no cheerful language about adventure, and no gentle promise of fresh starts. Instead, I want to begin with a colder truth. I want to begin in a damp English morning, in a market that smells of mud, coal smoke, wet wool, and bread you cannot afford. Because for a great many ordinary people in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Australia did not begin as a destination. It began as a sentence. It began as a word spoken in a courtroom by a man in a powdered wig who looked as though he had never missed a meal in his life. It began with a theft so small it should have been forgotten by supper, and a punishment so large it could swallow the shape of a whole human future. Before we drift too far into that old and uneasy journey, you may quietly like the video and subscribe, but only if these slow historical wanderings have already become part of your evenings. And if you like leaving a little trace before sleep takes over, you can tell me where in the world you are listening from tonight, and what tiny crime might have gotten you into terrible trouble in another century. Then let the room soften, let the day loosen its grip a little. You do not need to brace yourself for this story. Even when the subject grows harsh, we will move through it gently. That is the promise tonight. We will look at a severe world with a calm voice. Imagine a grey morning in London, or Portsmouth, or Bristol, or any other wet and weary corner of Britain, where a hungry person might find the law waiting at the end of one bad decision. The cobbles are slick, the air is cold enough to redden the hands, but not cold enough to keep anyone indoors. Market stalls lean under the weight of bread, cloth, pots, onions, scraps of meat, cheap ribbons, and the kind of practical goods that become impossible luxuries when wages are low and luck is worse. You have no money worth mentioning. Your coat is thinner than it should be. Your stomach has become louder than your caution. Somewhere nearby, a baker turns his head for half a second too long. A loaf sits too close to the edge of the stall, and suddenly the whole shape of your life hangs on the distance between one hand and one piece of bread. This is one of the first deep truths of transportation as punishment. The crimes that sent many convicts to Australia were often not grand crimes. They were small, desperate, clumsy, impulsive, or simply unlucky. Petty theft, stolen cloth, a handkerchief, a spoon, a loaf, a watch, a ribbon, a coin. In another moral system, these might have been treated as symptoms of hunger, poverty, or social failure. In the British system of the time, they could be treated as threats to order itself. The law had a special gift for pretending that a missing loaf endangered the whole kingdom. And so the theft grows in importance, not because the loaf is truly precious, but because the state requires a spectacle. You make your move, perhaps quickly, perhaps with the foolish confidence that desperation can imitate confidence if it tries hard enough. The bread vanishes into your coat. For one fragile second you have won, and then somebody sees. There is always somebody, a stall holder, a customer, a constable looking bored and eager for purpose, a boy with a talent for shouting, "Stop, thief!" The cry rings out. Heads turn. A crowd forms with the supernatural speed crowds have always possessed when the possibility of public humiliation appears. You run, or at least you try to. Shoes slip, elbows hit damp coats. Somebody catches your sleeve, a hand clamps down on your shoulder. The loaf that was meant to disappear into your hunger becomes evidence in your hands. The walk to the cell is often short, but short distances can feel very long when they are lined with faces. Some look amused. Some look pleased to be on the lawful side of the moment. Some look pitying in the way pity can sometimes feel worse than contempt. The constable says little because he does not need to. The bread is enough. The body is enough. The shame is already doing part of the work. By the time you reach the lockup, the theft has stopped being a private act and become a public identity. You are no longer hungry. You are now a thief. And once the state gives a person a simpler name, it becomes easier for the state to move them. The courtroom arrives with all the theater of authority and all the smell of bad weather. Damp wood, wet wool, ink, old paper, human impatience, powder from wigs, mud drying on boots, somebody coughs, somebody whispers. Somebody shifts on a bench that complains loudly enough to sound like commentary. You stand where you are told to stand. A clerk scratches your name into the official memory of the empire with an almost insulting calm. The judge peers through the ceremony of the room as if the ending is already known. And perhaps it is in these proceedings. Justice often feels less like a discovery than a routine. The prosecution tells the story of your theft in the inflated language of social collapse. You did not steal a loaf. You struck at property itself. You insulted order. You made an example necessary. If everyone behaved this way, the speech implies, England would dissolve by tea time, and the king would be reduced to guarding his own pantry. The logic is absurd, but it is the sort of absurdity power finds useful. Small crimes become metaphors so that large punishments can appear reasonable. In the background, the audience listens with the appetite of people who came for entertainment and now get to call it morality. Your own defense, if you are lucky enough to offer one, sounds painfully small inside the room. I was hungry. I needed money. I meant to return it. It was only cloth. It was only bread. It was only a spoon. But the law is not especially interested in scale, when scale would make it look cruel. The law prefers symbols, and the symbol it has chosen is you. When the sentence comes, it comes in language polished by repetition. Transportation beyond the seas, 7 years, 14 years, sometimes life. The words are tidy, the meaning is not. What the court has really said is simpler and more devastating, goes so far away that England no longer has to think about why you ended up here. For families, this sentence is a special kind of wound. Death has rituals. Transportation has distances. A mother can cry in the gallery, but she cannot follow. A husband can stand numb by the door, hat in hand, and know that the person before him is still alive and already leaving. A child may remember only the wig, the shouting, the strange solemnity, and the way adults afterwards would not quite explain where father or mother or brother had gone. Transportation made grief thin and long. It did not give the clean violence of an ending. It gave waiting, guessing, and the possibility that someone might survive in a place so distant it sounded half-invented. After the sentence comes the practical cruelty of packing. The empire may take a great interest in your removal, but it takes remarkably little interest in your comfort during it. You are allowed in theory a few possessions. What does a person take into exile when exile has already stripped the future of shape? A shirt, if you have a second shirt, a broken comb, a ribbon tied around the wrist, a little folded letter, a spoon not worth stealing from you, a button, a pebble, a deck of cards hidden in cloth. Anything too useful is taken. Anything too sharp is taken. Anything too nice is envied. You wrap your life in cloth and hold it under one arm. The bundle is light enough to lift with ease and heavy enough to make breathing feel more deliberate. There is always something haunting in how small exile looks from the outside. One person, one bundle, a coat too thin for the weather, hair badly tied back, shoes that already know how to fail at the wrong moment. Yet inside that smallness is a complete collapse of the ordinary future. No more familiar lane, no more known market, no more family table, no more argument with the same neighbor or comfort in the same cracked mug. The state has turned the world inside out, and now everything worth carrying seems either impossible to pack or too painful to touch. The last night before embarkation is not usually grand enough for history books, but it is often the moment the punishment becomes real. The pre-embarkation lockup is a place designed for holding bodies rather than minds. Stone walls damp with old cold straw that never fully dries. Air thick with the smell of worry, old breath, and the fatigue of too many people forced into stillness. The beds are shelves or slabs more than beds. The blankets are sacks pretending to be kindness. The company is a rough collection of the condemned, the waiting, and the unlucky. Some mutter, some snore, some stare at nothing at all. Somewhere in the corner, a rat conducts itself with more confidence than anyone else in the room. You try to sleep because morning will demand strength, but thought has become more active than the body. You think of the judge, you think of the loaf, you think of the mother in the gallery, or the brother by the door, or the child who asks too few questions to understand the answer. You think of ships you have never seen, and oceans that may as well be mythology. The dark seems to press against the eyes. A person coughs nearby. Another shifts and groans. The guard's boots pass now and then, like punctuation. A drip somewhere in the ceiling measures time more honestly than any clock. Dawn does not arrive so much as slowly leak into the room. At first light, the process becomes brisk. Names called. Bundles collected. Bodies counted. Doors opened and shut. Boots, rope, curses, orders. The walk to the docks is one of those ordinary historical processions that contain more emotional weight than they show. A small group of prisoners, guarded and silent, moving through streets where life continues with insulting normality. Shop shutters lifted, bread carts rolling, somebody sweeping a doorstep, somebody arguing about fish prices, somebody lighting a fire. Your life is ending in plain sight of people beginning their day. That is another little cruelty of transportation. It happens while the world around it carries on. Then the ship appears, and the imagination, which had previously been allowed to invent milder versions of reality, is forced to surrender. The transport is no vessel of romance. It is dark, massive, practical, and already foul before you have set foot on it. The hull rises like an argument against hope. Rope hangs in wet curves. Tar shines in places where the light catches it. Gulls wheel overhead, as if waiting to inherit something. Sailors move with the alert carelessness of men whose bodies belong to motion now. Soldiers and guards stand where they are useful, not where they are beautiful. Somewhere aboard, a bucket slams into wood. Somewhere else, someone already inside coughs hard enough to make the sound travel out through the planks. The gangplank is narrower than you imagined. It moves under every step. That movement is the first warning from the sea that nothing ahead will remain still when you need it to. A guard urges you onward, because hesitation is the last private luxury you are permitted. You step from land to ship and feel, perhaps for the first time, that the sentence has become a physical thing. England is behind you. Water waits everywhere else. The empire has turned geography itself into punishment. Below deck, the air hits like another sentence. Warm, stale, damp, crowded, used. There are rows of rough sleeping places, boards and cots and shelves depending on the vessel. There are buckets set for purposes better not considered all at once. There are chains in some cases, bars in others, iron, rope, hooks, pegs, benches, bowls, shadows. But most of all, there are people. Too many people for the room. People who have brought their bodies, their illnesses, their habits, their hunger, their fear, and the smell of old cloth with them. Personal space vanishes immediately. So does any illusion that the ship is a journey, is a mechanism for compression. The first day below deck teaches you the new scale of existence. Your sleeping place is this much wood. Your belongings are this much cloth. Your drinking water is this much ration. Your air is this much stale. Your future is measured in waves and orders, and whatever patience you can teach your body to perform. People introduce themselves not always by name, but by condition. The old hand who has seen prison hulks before, the boy with quick fingers, the man with the laugh too large for the room, the woman whose eyes never fully close, the quiet one who seems to count everything, the one who talks about escape before the ship has even left sight of shore. You learn quickly, because you have to, on a convict transport. Survival begins with observation. Then comes motion. It arrives first as suggestion, then as rule. A slight shift, a heavier sway, a creak in the timbers that feels like the ship clearing its throat before beginning a long speech. Soon the deck is alive beneath your feet. To stand is to negotiate. To walk is to submit. To lie still is to discover that stillness no longer exists. Seasickness chooses without dignity. The hardened cough beside you may become retching within the hour. The loud man may go pale and silent. The young woman who looks scarcely able to lift her bundle may grip the bench and outlast everyone. Buckets become important in ways no one enjoys discussing. Food does not improve matters. Ship's biscuit is among the most famous misery foods in maritime history, and for good reason. It is hard, dry, resistant, and often occupied. Weevils are not rare enough to be interesting. Salt meat arrives shiny with preservation and menace. Porridge appears in bowls with a look of exhaustion, as though even the oat itself gave up halfway through the process. Stew, if you are fortunate enough to receive stew, asks too many questions of trust. Yet, appetite is a stern teacher. After enough hunger, standards stop arguing. A biscuit with fewer holes becomes a gift. A strip of meat that can be chewed before patience fails becomes a luxury. A swallow of anything warm becomes almost intimate. Meals soon reveal their social importance. Food is not only food aboard a convict ship. It is timekeeping, bargaining, hierarchy, distraction, and proof that the day has not entirely lost its shape. People trade crusts for favors, gossip for a better place near the pot, future promises for present crumbs. Someone claims they saw a sailor with fresh bread. Someone else claims the captain has a cheese wheel all to himself. Stories of better food become a currency more stable than hope. Even humor begins to organize itself around the meal, because nothing makes people inventive like hunger with nowhere to go. Water is rationed for drinking long before anyone considers washing. The body begins to collect the voyage in layers, salt on skin, damp in cloth, itch beneath collars, hair gone stubborn. Lice take the opportunity the state has provided them. Please move in with the calm entitlement of long-distance travelers. Shirts become ecosystems. Blankets become arguments. The lower deck learns the smell of everyone, and then, more sorrowfully, learns not to mind it as much. This is one of the most human and most devastating adjustments in the story. People can get used to nearly anything, including what should never become normal. Smell deserves its own slow accounting, not because description alone is interesting, but because the atmosphere below deck is half the punishment. Wet wood, bilge, sweat dried and rewarmed, salt, dirty straw, old food, new sickness, human breath in close quarters, chamber pots, damp wool, sour cloth, iron, vinegar, when somebody tries to improve matters. The smell is never one thing. It is a society. It changes by hour, by storm, by meal, by the number of bodies coughing in the dark. At first it arrives as an insult. Later it becomes weather. The day you stop flinching from it is the day you begin to understand how far from ordinary life you have moved. And yet society forms. It always does. The ship becomes a floating parish of the unlucky, each soul finding a role, the way water finds low ground. There is always the veteran of prior imprisonment who tells stories in a voice soaked with doom. There is always the boy so quick with hands and eyes that you sleep with your shoes on. There is always the giant whose size promises danger, but whose conversation drifts toward geese, weather, or childhood. There is always the woman with sharp humor who can slice gloom clean in half for a minute. There is always the one who believes in mutiny, and the one who believes in miracles, and the one who believes only in breakfast. These people, crammed together under discipline, begin to recognize one another's rhythms. They know who wakes crying, who prays under the breath, who hides bread, who scratches too much, who talks in sleep, who can be trusted with silence. This social world matters because it is one of the few forms of resistance available. The ship may own the bodies, but not all the meanings those bodies make together. A blanket edge shared in cold weather is not grand rebellion, but it is defiance against total isolation. A joke whispered in the dark is not mutiny, but it interrupts the intended atmosphere of submission. A crust passed quietly to someone too sick to argue with hunger is not justice, but it is a small human answer to a system built from indifference. These acts are tiny and therefore easy to overlook. History often overlooks them. Sleep history should not. Discipline remains everywhere. Guards, officers, sailors, all understand that too many convicts in too little space can turn quickly from misery into danger. Order is therefore maintained with a mixture of routine, threat, observation, and punishment. The lash irons public correction, extra restraint, shouted commands, denial of small privileges. All these linger in the imagination, even when not visibly in use. A convict learns quickly that survival often means not becoming the center of the room. Be seen enough to be accounted for, not enough to be remembered. Obey before anger is required. Move when told. Do not let boredom convince you to become interesting. Interesting people often discipline people. Still, even severe systems cannot abolish the body's old habits. You dream, you complain, you itch, you stare at the ceiling and build impossible escape plans in the dark. Escape by overpowering the guards, escape by slipping overboard at night, escape by hiding until the next port, escape by persuading a sailor, escape by becoming sick enough to be moved, but not sick enough to die. None of these plans needs to make sense in order to matter. Their importance lies in the mind's refusal to stop inventing exits. The body is aboard ship. The imagination still crosses doors and thresholds without permission. Rumors of mutiny rise out of this same need. They flare in evenings when the air is close and the lantern burns low. Someone heard the captain is careless. Someone saw where the keys were kept. Someone knows how to steer. Someone else knows where a musket might be found. Hunger provides the courage. Weakness removes it. By morning, the revolution is often reduced to muttering and a broom handle that never became symbolic enough to matter. Yet the dream of mutiny keeps something alive. It says that even in compression, the self has not become entirely obedient. Storms interrupt all this with magnificent indifference. The sea does not care for legal sentences, imperial schemes, or human rank. When weather turns, everything aboard changes texture. Rain enters from everywhere. The hull shudders. The ship rises and falls with a violence that makes even the healthy feel uncertain about the arrangement of their organs. Buckets overturn. Water runs where it should not. People who had been quietly brave become noisily devout. Guards shout not as masters, but as frightened men with tasks. Sailors move with the desperate competence of those who have practiced fear into routine. The ship ceases to be a prison and becomes, for a while, a small piece of wood trying not to die. There is a special equality in a storm. The judge is far away. The sentence is temporarily irrelevant. Everyone aboard now belongs to the same possibility of loss. A chain may not save you. A title will not save you. A clean conscience certainly will not save you. Only the ship, the skill of the crew, and the sea's temporary decision not to finish the conversation. When lightning throws the lower deck into brief white relief, faces look stripped of pretense. The laughing boy, the hard guard, the woman with the sharp tongue, the old convict who claimed to fear nothing, all are simply human in wet cloth, holding on. After the storm passes, relief arrives exhausted. No one celebrates elegantly. People sit in damp clothes and breathe. A biscuit shared afterward can feel more ceremonial than a feast. A weak joke becomes precious. The ship drips, blankets steam faintly, if any warmth can be found. Somebody sleeps at once. Somebody cannot sleep at all. Even quarrels seem tired. Then, Because routine is relentless, breakfast returns. The shouting returns, the smell returns, and the journey resumes its long mechanical patience. Long voyages breed rituals. Sailors have old ones, convicts invent new ones, and some events belong to the sea itself. Crossing the line, for example, may call forth Neptune and his rough court, complete with mock trials, dunkings, shaving, tar, laughter, and the old maritime pleasure of making the powerless more ridiculous before briefly welcoming them into a shared ordeal. Convict may be miserable and absurd in the same afternoon. In another genre, that would be played for comedy. Here, it is enough to say that humiliation and community often wore the same clothes at sea. Time loses edges, days become groups rather than units. Another dawn through grey light, another ration line, another cough, another rumor, another night in which someone whispers about home, as though home itself were contraband. England changes in memory. Streets once hated become beloved. Rain becomes grace. Black bread becomes feast. A mother's kitchen, which once seemed too small, now becomes an entire lost kingdom in the mind. Exile begins before arrival. It begins when memory grows more nourishing than the present. Rats remain constant. They move along beams, behind barrels, across sleeping feet, through scraps and straw, perfectly adapted to the terms of the voyage. Some prisoners hate them with passionate energy. Others, after enough weeks, begin to treat them as grim professionals. A rat never judges you for theft. A rat has no opinion on the king. A rat cares only for crumbs and survival. There is a rough kind of comfort in that. On some nights, the ship's most stable society seems to belong to the vermin. Then, after months of repetition, comes land. At first, it is no more than a dark interruption between water and sky. Then shape, then green, then certainty. Faces crowd toward whatever opening grants a view. Even those who had sworn never to cry sometimes cry. Others laugh too quickly, as if unsure whether relief can be trusted. The crew changes mood. Officers regain their official manner. Sailors smell pay and rest. Convicts feel what only a transported person can feel in such a moment. Gratitude that the sea is ending, and dread because the sea was only the first part of the punishment. Australia arrives first as light, not the grey filtered light of Britain, but a brighter, harder, wider brightness that seems to ignore all the tones the transported knew how to read. The sky looks larger. The shoreline carries unfamiliar shapes. Trees rise in forms that do not answer English expectations. Birds sound indecently confident. The air itself seems rearranged, dry where you expected damp, sharp where you expected soot, fragrant in ways the mind cannot yet file. For one suspended moment, the place is almost beautiful, and that beauty can feel rude. Punishment is not supposed to gleam. Disembarkation is brisk and humiliating in the practical colonial way. Counted, sorted, prodded, inspected, recorded again. A surgeon or official looks you over, not as a soul, but as a unit of labor. Are you fit? Are you diseased? Are you strong enough to work? The colony does not want your story, unless your story affects your usefulness. Transportation was always more than removal. It was labor relocation, under the language of punishment. Britain exported people and expected roads, barracks, farms, kitchens, fences, storehouses, and all the crude architecture of occupation to rise from their bodies. The first days ashore can feel harsher in a new register. The ship at least taught you what misery smelled like. The colony teaches new lessons: heat that presses down without asking permission, flies that make conversation with your face, overseers whose voices carry across open ground more efficiently than kindness, tools heavier than expected, distances larger than they appear, soil harder, then softer, then strange. Work begins quickly because colonial systems dislike wasted bodies. Some convicts go to government gangs, some to settlers, some to domestic service, some to roads, stone, timber, or chains. The sentence, which had been made of sea, now becomes made of land. Imagine assignment day, a line of transported bodies standing under a sky too bright for comfort. Officials looking them over as if at market, this one for road work, that one for a settler with stock, that woman to a household, that man to chains. The process is brisk enough to feel obscene. No one asks much about preference. Preference was left behind with the first sentence. The new question is only what use can be made of you. And then you are handed over to labor the way a tool is placed in another hand. Road gangs are among the colony's most exhausting forms of practicality. In theory, it is simple work. Clear this ground, move these stones, level this track. In reality, it is a war with dust, roots, heat, flies, blunted tools, and the stubborn refusal of the earth to become orderly for imperial convenience. Day after day, roads are argued into the landscape by men already worn thin by sea and sentence. Rocks acquire personalities because naming them is easier than moving them. Overseers pace and shout, the sun burns the neck, thirst becomes a second supervisor. By evening, the body no longer feels like a body so much as a collection of complaints tied together with skin. Others are sent to farms or stock work. Sheep, which from a distance seem comic and harmless, quickly reveal themselves as stubborn white weather with opinions. A convict newly assigned to them may discover within an hour that sheep possess the collective intelligence of confusion and the individual determination of miniature bureaucrats. They run when they should not, stop when they should not, and look at you as though the whole colonial experiment were your personal fault. Yet the work teaches strange things: how to move slowly, how to watch the horizon, how to notice weather before it arrives, how to measure time by shade and animal mood, rather than bells and courtroom schedules. Women assigned to households or workshops enter other kinds of hardship: kitchen labor, washing, mending, cleaning, childcare, hauling, baking, carrying, rising before dawn, sleeping after everyone else. The work is enclosed rather than expansive, but it consumes the same body. A house in the colony is not necessarily gentler than a road gang. It simply hides its labor under other sounds: the scrape of pots, the slap of wet cloth, the hush required when masters nap, the endless practical intelligence of keeping domestic life functioning in a rough place. Some households are survivable, some are cruel, many are both. Depending on the hour, medical care in the colony rarely deserves the name in any modern sense. The ship's surgeon, if you survived him, had already taught you caution. Ashore, medicine remains improvised, uneven, half confident and half fatalistic. Bleeding, purging, crude surgery, doubtful powders, home remedies, vinegar, rum, prayer, waiting. Infection is a constant shadow. A cut from labor can become a week of fear. A toothache becomes a small private war. A fever can pass or deepen or remove you altogether. Bodies in penal colonies are expected to keep working until they make continued work impossible. Rest is not a philosophy the system admires. Yet there is adaptation even here. Humans are very good at developing customs around difficulty. You learn whose herbal nonsense sometimes works. You learn that a rinse with this, a poultice of that, shade at noon if you can steal it, extra water if you can trade for it, all matter. You learn who among the other convicts knows old country remedies, and which ones are more than wishful thinking. You learn that shared survival creates its own kind of practical medicine. Someone watches your fever. Someone saves you a softer piece of bread. Someone lies to an overseer about how fast you can lift a bucket. These are tiny actions, but tiny actions are often what keep history populated. The colony's wildlife, meanwhile, refuses to be decorative. Birds shriek or laugh. Lizards appear like thoughts that forgot to stay hidden. Flies arrive in democratic numbers, Ants conduct campaigns. Spiders confirm every rumor. Kangaroos behave like creatures invented by a drunken dream of zoology. Emus look like disapproving colonial officials dressed in feathers. Everything here seems to possess either unexpected confidence or unreasonable legs. To a transported Briton, the natural world can feel as though the sentence has spilled beyond courts and ships into the land itself. Yet even this strangeness softens with time. A creature that once terrified you becomes part of the morning. A bird call that sounded alien becomes the hour before work. Fear, like homesickness, changes shape when repeated long enough. Then comes the quieter transformation, the one history notices less because it is not dramatic enough for legend. Routine. A convict survives one day, then another, then enough days in sequence that the place begins to acquire ordinary meanings. This path is where the shade is. That trough water tastes less awful than the other. That overseer shouts, but does not always strike. Those fields flood in rain. This fence leans in the wind. That bird calls before dawn. That patch of ground grows beans if guarded from kangaroos. That person can be trusted with silence. This one cannot be trusted with a spoon. Exile begins to grow habits, and habits are the first roots of existence. Some convicts eventually receive tickets of leave or other partial freedoms. Some become less tightly bound to government work. Some hire out skills. Some build huts. Some save scraps. Some keep little gardens that are part nutrition. Pot rebellion. A green shoot pushing up from colonial dirt can feel strangely personal. It says not only that the plant survived, but that the convict who planted it still imagines a tomorrow worth feeding. Beans, onions, herbs, a patch of greens, maybe a row trampled by a kangaroo that behaves as though property law never crossed the ocean. Even disappointment in gardening can become a domestic luxury. It is a different kind of suffering than the ship. That alone matters. Social life, too, reassembles itself from fragments. Meals taken with fellow exiles, weak tea shared over stronger gossip, complaints about weather, rations, overseers, and animals. Jokes about London fog that once inspired hatred and now inspires nostalgia. Unlikely friendships hardening into routine. The old hand from the ship becomes a neighbor with a shovel and bad opinions. The clever pickpocket becomes useful in errands and messages. The sharp-tongued woman becomes the person everyone asks about planting times. Courtship, and whose child resembles whom. Colonial society, especially in its rougher edges, is stitched together from the very people Britain tried to dispose of. That is one of the story's deepest ironies, and one of its quietest comforts. Some even write letters home, though home has become a difficult word. What do you say in such a letter? That the land is strange, that the birds sound like laughter or machinery, that the heat is rude, that the work is hard, that you nearly died at sea, that you are, against expectation, still alive, that you have planted beans, that you miss the old lane, that you do not miss the old lane as much as you once did. Letters home can be full of performance, pain, hope, or silence. They try to fold a giant distance into a page and never quite succeed. Still, they are proof of one thing above all. The transported person still considers themselves a person with a story worth telling. For some, families form, not always from romance in the polished sense, but from proximity, usefulness, tenderness grown slowly, and the practical desire not to be alone in a hard world. A hut shared is warmer than a hut alone. A child born in the colony rearranges time itself. The transported parent who once stood in court as a disposable nuisance now worries about blankets, beans, fevers, goats, and what kind of future can be built from such poor beginnings. This does not redeem the system. It reveals something more stubborn than redemption. Human life keeps making forms of itself even inside structures designed to diminish it. There remain, of course, many who do not thrive. Some are flogged, some are resentenced, some drink too hard, some gamble away the little they gather. Some die in accidents, illness, exhaustion, childbirth, punishment, or the old quiet way poor people disappear from records. This is not a story of universal uplift. It is a story of persistence under bad design. Some lives improve, some merely continue, some break, but even continuation can be more remarkable than the empire intended. Over time, the first identity given by the court begins to blur. Thief, forger, pickpocket, transported felon, these remain on paper. But daily life adds other names: road worker, cook, shepherd, seamstress, gardener, mother, neighbor, handyman, carter, baker, messenger, husband, widow, builder, the law, sent a criminal. The colony often ended up living beside a person. That shift does not erase the violence at the beginning. It simply shows how incomplete punishment becomes once ordinary time is allowed to accumulate on top of it. Imagine an evening some years after arrival. The workday is done. Heat lifts slowly from the earth. Smoke rises from cook fires in soft blue lines. Insects hum in the scrub. Someone curses quietly at a pot. Someone else laughs at a story told badly on purpose. A child chases a chicken, or is chased by one. Tools lean against a wall. A patch of beans survives the week. A woman mends by dim light. A man sits outside a hut and rubs his hands as though they belong to someone older than the person who first boarded the ship. Above, the stars are arranged in patterns that would have been wrong over England and are now simply the truth. This is not triumph. It is something smaller and perhaps stronger. It is life after the state attempted to reduce a person to distance. Before we leave the voyage behind, though, the middle of this story deserves more room, because that is where the sentence does most of its real work. Not in the courtroom, where it is declared, and not even in the colony, where it is put to use, but in the long stretch between them, where the condemned body is slowly taught how little comfort the empire intends to spare. Packing for transportation is one of the bleakest little rituals in all of this history. The state announces that a few personal items may be taken, and the phrase sounds almost considerate until one remembers that the person doing the packing is not preparing for travel, but for disappearance. You go through your possessions, if possessions is even the right word for the handful of objects poverty has left you. One shirt with more mending than cloth, another too torn to justify, a broken comb, a spoon with a nick at the edge, a ribbon, a cap, a letter, a button, a small token from a parent or child, perhaps a Bible if you own one, perhaps a deck of cards if you dare. Every object feels too small for the task asked of it. None of it can preserve a life. At best, it can keep a memory from feeling entirely naked. The process is both intimate and humiliating. Guards inspect what you bundle. Anything sharp, useful, or pleasing may be taken. Anything too nice might invite theft before you even reach the dock. Prisoners become clever in these moments. One ties a ribbon around the ankle beneath the hem. Another folds a note into a seam. Someone hides a needle in rough stitching. Someone else smuggles a scrap of twine like a relic. Even when the journey ahead is vast, the mind still thinks in tiny salvations. A letter, a spoon, a shirt that still smells faintly, impossibly, of home. Then there is the pre-embarkation lockup, which in the source is one of the strongest atmospheric set pieces and deserves its own wider drift here. The cell or ward or holding room is the last place in England many convicts truly occupy, and it is rarely a room anyone would want to remember. The walls sweat with damp, the floor feels both cold and sticky underfoot. Straw lies flattened by too many bodies and too many sleepless nights. The window, if there is one, gives little except a gray suggestion of weather. The air smells of boiled cloth, old breath, fear, and the kind of fatigue that has stopped complaining, because complaint would require spare energy. You sit or lie where there is room, not where there is comfort. Someone nearby keeps muttering the same sentence under their breath, as if repetition alone might improve it. Someone else has managed to fall asleep in conditions that seem like a personal betrayal to everyone still awake. The sounds of the lockup become their own low orchestra. A cough from the dark, the scrape of a shoe on stone, a bucket shifted, straw rustling, a laugh too abrupt to be healthy, boots in the corridor, keys turning somewhere beyond reach. Every now and then, a rat reminds the room who truly owns the place. Sleep comes only in fragments. 1 minute you dream of open air or bread or rain or your mother's kitchen. The next minute you are awake again, arm numb beneath your head, staring into blackness and trying not to measure the distance between England and whatever lies beyond the sea. Morning on the dock has a different quality of brutality because it is busy. Rope, shouted orders, gulls wheeling above, the groan of wood, the wet smell of tar, the slap of water against pilings, the clatter of boots and iron. Everything is alive with motion, except the people being moved through it. Convicts are hurried in lines and counted again as if the act of counting could hide the violence under procedure. Some look stunned, some numb, some already reduced to obedience by the simple fact of not knowing what else to do. The ship stands ready not like a vehicle, but like an answer. This is where troublesome people go, up the plank, into the hold, out of the nation and into distance. The source dwells vividly on the first impressions of the transport itself, and rightly so. The smell comes before the full understanding. Wet rope, rotting timber, bilge water, old cabbage, metal, bodies, and something sour that no one needs explained. You are pushed aboard before the senses have finished objecting. The plank wobbles, the deck seems higher and less welcoming than decks ought to be. Sailors move around you as if this were ordinary, which somehow makes it worse. Ordinary for them, catastrophic for you. Below, the light shrinks and the air thickens. The ship is already a world, and it is a world with almost no mercy in its design. The first below-deck hours are not dramatic in a theatrical sense. They are dramatic in the sense that the body understands too quickly what the mind has not yet accepted. This is where you will sleep. This is where you will eat. This is where you will sweat, itch, pray, bargain, dream, despair, and learn the private sounds of strangers. The Cotobonco shelf assigned to you is not yours in any generous sense, but you cling to it all the same because on a convict ship even a badly built rectangle of wood can become the outline of identity. People begin arranging themselves at once, bundles tucked under heads, shoes hidden beneath knees, better places near air claimed by the shrewd or lucky. The room acquires hierarchy before the ship has even cleared the harbor. Then comes the first true day at sea, when the shore has slipped away enough to stop pretending it will return soon. Seasickness, in the source, is treated with dark comedy. Here, I want to make it slower, softer, more bodily. You wake thinking for one hopeful second that you are merely tired, and then the ship tilts in a way that makes your stomach understand more than your mind. The floor rises toward you, then away. The walls breathe. The bunk shifts beneath your spine. Someone retches, then another. Then another. It becomes almost communal, a miserable chorus through which each person discovers their own limits. There is no dignity in motion sickness, only surrender. The older hands advise keeping the eyes on the horizon, which would be useful if the lower deck contained anything except wood, faces, and bad air. Breakfast arrives into this atmosphere like a practical joke. Hard biscuit, salt meat, porridge, maybe stew later if fortune and discipline cooperate. The biscuit is so hard that it seems less baked than forged. The meat is all preservation and warning. The porridge is a great truce between hunger and disappointment. Yet by the second week, these become the fixed stars of the day. There is breakfast, there is work or confinement or routine. There is a midday meal, there is evening food, the appetite does not so much improve as lower its expectations until survival and gratitude begin sharing a plate. Food aboard a convict transport is not only about nourishment, it is about morale, barter, rumor, and memory. Someone swears there is real cheese in the officers' stores. Someone else claims a sailor can be bribed with tobacco or buttons. A bit of better bread becomes a legend long before it becomes a meal. The weevils in the biscuit cease to inspire outrage and begin to inspire resignation. Toothless older convicts discover that they are, at last, better suited than the young to the ship's menu. A spoonful of something warmer than the room feels almost medicinal. Hunger turns every small improvement into an event. Cleanliness vanishes with startling speed. Water is too precious for washing. And even if there were plenty, there would not be enough space, privacy, or patience. Clothes remain on until they become second skins. Shirts acquire a damp philosophy of their own. Hair forms alliances with salt and neglect. Lice arrive with bureaucratic efficiency. Fleas conduct nightly operations. The sauce is very rich here. And this middle stretch needs that richness to build its length properly. Not because disgust is the goal, but because the slow erosion of cleanliness is one of the central facts of life below deck. Person does not become less human in filth. A person becomes more aware of how much of civilization is just the fragile arrangement that keeps filth at polite distance. The smell, too, changes with time. At first it is impossible, then it is merely constant, then it becomes so ordinary that fresh air, when it appears on deck for a moment, feels almost supernatural. This adaptation is one of the voyage's quiet sorrows. The body gets used to what the mind once rejected: sweat, damp straw, unwashed cloth, bad food, bilge, chamber pots, sickness, vinegar, breath, salt. Together they compose the air of punishment, and yet people still joke, they still complain with inventiveness, they still try little improvements. A dab of vinegar here, a shirt turned inside out there, airing a blanket when the guards allow it. Human beings remain domestic creatures, even inside systems built to strip domestic life away. The floating society of the lower deck deserves even more patience. Source gives us toothless men, pickpocket boys, sharp women, big laborers, mutiny talkers, ghost talkers, all the strange parliament of misery that develops where people are trapped long enough. In the sleep version, I widen this into a softer social drift. There is always the old-timer who explains everything badly but with confidence. The child or youth who should not be here, and therefore becomes everyone's reminder that the law can be both routine and monstrous. The storyteller who reworks every detail of home until even their own memories sound suspect. The practical woman who has already decided which guard can be flattered, which can be feared, and which is too stupid for either. The giant whose anger takes up space, but whose loneliness takes up more. These people become the furniture of daily life. You begin to measure time by them. He is coughing again. She is laughing again. That boy has stolen another crust. That woman has started another rumor. The room gains rhythm. Privacy, or the lack of it, shapes everything. You sleep within earshot of other people's nightmares. You wake to their coughs, their scratching, their muttered prayers. You eat near their elbows and their smells. Grief, embarrassment, hunger, illness, and even boredom become public experiences because the ship has no interest in curtains. This does strange things to dignity. At first everyone guards what remains of theirs later. Dignity becomes less about concealment and more about endurance. Who can keep their temper? Who can share a crumb? Who can survive humiliation without becoming crueler than the room around them? Discipline sits over all this like weather. The guards do not always need to strike. The possibility is often enough. A certain bark in the voice, a hand on a club, the clank of irons, the public memory of what happened to the last person who became memorable for the wrong reason. Punishment aboard ship is both practical and theatrical. It is meant to correct behavior, and remind the watchers how easily their own bodies could be made into examples. A man tied up for lashes is not only suffering for himself, he is suffering for the lesson. Bilbos, irons, isolation, extra labor, cleaning the foulest corner at the worst possible time, all these become part of the moral furniture of the voyage. The Source's storm sequence is one of its strongest engines, and for a 67, zero-character sleep script, it needs space. Not because storm equals spectacle, but because storm resets the emotional scale of the journey. You cannot be only a prisoner in a storm. You become again a person on a fragile piece of wood in a very large sea. The weather begins with signs the sailors notice before the convicts do. A change in the wind, sails handled differently, joke stopping, orders becoming shorter. Then the sky closes. Rain finds every weakness in the ship. Water enters from above while the sea hammers from below. Lantern light becomes erratic. The hold turns into a half-lit world of wet timber, fear, and bodies trying not to slam into one another too hard. Storm fear is collective, in a way. Prison fear is not. A sentence isolates. A storm merges. Guards, sailors, convicts, all become wet animals clinging to routine and wood. Some pray, some swear, some are too frightened to make language at all. The floor turns treacherous. Buckets break loose. Blankets soak through. Anyone who had cherished the fantasy that punishment was at least orderly now sees the other older order beneath it. Wind, water, gravity, timber. When a storm is at its height, the Empire feels very far away, even though the Empire built the ship. And then, as in the Source, the storm passes, and the passing has its own emotional role. The ship does not become pleasant afterward, it becomes merely survivable again. Wet straw, soggy blankets, exhausted silence. People who have just remembered mortality in the oldest possible way now sit beside one another in a shared fatigue that almost resembles fellowship. A joke after a storm lands differently. So does a biscuit, so does a prayer. Then, by the following morning, the old complaints return. That too is human. We promise improvement in danger and recover our old habits in safety. Mutiny belongs to the same stretch of the voyage and should be expanded, not for action, but for false action. Mutiny talk is a dream of control in a place where almost nobody controls anything. The Source handles this with wonderful dark humor. A broomstick, a spoon, a potato, a plan to sail back to England with not one skilled navigator among them. In sleep form, this becomes softer and sadder. Men and women, too weak to stand steadily, nonetheless imagine seizing a ship. Not because the plan is rational, but because the imagination must produce doors where none exist. Late night, rebellion meetings become little theaters of denial, hope, bravado, and hunger. Somebody always believes, somebody always doubts, and by morning the ocean, the guards, and the ship's sheer practical difficulty have usually ended the revolution before breakfast. Rats deserve their own slow return as well, not merely as vermin, but as a strange measure of adaptation. At first every rat is an insult, then every rat is a fact, then a few become familiar. This one missing part of an ear, that one bold enough to cross your foot at night, another who appears only near the food barrels. The ship's unofficial citizens, when human company is exhausting. Vermin can become predictable enough to seem almost companionable. That is one of the voyage's odd emotional tricks. The lower the standards of comfort sink, the more room there is for strange forms of acceptance. The equator ritual, Neptune's court, dunkings, shaving. Tar, mock judgment, should also breathe a little longer here, because it serves a retention function the Source used very well. It changes the texture of the journey before monotony hardens too much. Sailors love ritual partly because ritual turns endless water into a calendar. Convicts dragged into the ritual discover that humiliation can briefly resemble inclusion. You are mocked, shaved badly, drenched, laughed at, and made ridiculous. But afterward, you belong a fraction more to the floating world than you did before. You have crossed something. Even punishment at sea occasionally borrows the language of initiation. Eventually land appears, the source captures the mood change well, and the longer script needs to dwell inside it. Crew energy sharpens, convicts crowd openings, railings, cracks of light. The body that had nearly learned to believe in endless water suddenly has a horizon that holds shape. Australia is still abstract for a few minutes. Then it becomes trees, coastline, brightness, color, and the terrible return of future tense thought. What happens next? What waits there? Is this the end of one suffering or the beginning of another? Relief is not pure. It is braided tightly with fear. The first breath of land after so long at sea is one of the deepest sensory resets in the story. Even if the shore smells unfamiliar, even if it is sharp with plants and heat and mud and birds and dust, you do not yet understand. It is not ship air. That alone can bring people close to tears. The earth underfoot, once reached, feels strange in its steadiness. After months of movement, still ground can seem almost shocking. A convict stepping from boat to shore is not simply arriving. The whole inner rhythm must relearn what no longer sways. The source then moves into medical inspection, and here too there is room to widen the script without bloating it. Colonial medicine is brisk, suspicious, practical, and often more interested in labor capacity than healing. The doctor or surgeon looks at teeth, eyes, skin, wounds, posture, cough, strength. You are assessed less like a patient and more like equipment. Contagious, useful, weak, fit, unfit, recoverable, trouble. Every judgment has consequences because the colony wants bodies to survive just enough to work. Sympathy, when present, is accidental. This medical thread is worth extending because it links the ship to the colony. The ship's surgeon with his rough tools, saws, rum, powders, and guesswork does not disappear when land appears. He evolves into colonial medicine more broadly. Improvised treatment, infection everywhere, fevers, dysentery, bad teeth, poorly healed wounds, childbirth risk, snakebite panic, and the old rule that poor people are expected to heal quickly or be buried economically. A convict with a fever may still have tasks. A convict with a swollen hand still has tools waiting. A convict with a toothache learns that extraction is not a conversation, but an event. Work assignments form one of the major missing middle-late blocks, and the source is very rich there. Assignment day feels like a grim colonial lottery. Government gang, settlers farm, road crew, chain gang, domestic service, messenger duty if you are quick, bakery if you are miraculous, sheep if the universe is feeling mischievous. One by one, people are peeled away into functions. There is almost no time to adjust emotionally before a tool, a rope, a pail, a cart, or a new set of shouted expectations lands in your hands. Road building in the colony deserves a real loop because it is one of the purest expressions of punishment turned into infrastructure. In theory, it is simple. Move dirt, break stone, clear roots, level ground. In reality, it is war against heat, monotony, bad tools, bigger stones than expected, and the colony's refusal to become orderly at the speed empire desires. Men begin naming the rocks they cannot move, because naming is easier than moving. Dust climbs into the mouth. Flies occupy the face. Overseers pace. The sun behaves personally. A road is carved into the land, one complaint at a time. Sheep work is another essential source block, and wonderfully good for sleep content once softened. A city thief, or dockside petty criminal, suddenly finds himself holding a stick and being told that those white creatures there are his responsibility. The sheep, naturally, have no respect for biography. They drift, scatter, bolt, stare, and demonstrate that woolly confusion can travel at alarming speed. Shepherding looks peaceful only from the distance of art. Up close, it is weather, dung, dust, stubbornness, and the peculiar humiliation of being outwitted by animals with no interest in the penal logic that brought you there. Domestic labor should expand too. Women, and some men in service, wake before dawn, scrub, carry, wash, mend, cook, bake, clean, nurse children, fetch water, haul wood, endure masters, and move through days where there is almost never enough sitting. The work is repetitive in the way that wears a person smooth. Yet even there, routines form a certain quiet in the kitchen before others rise. The relief of dough taking shape under the hands, the smell of bread improved ever so slightly by colonial adaptation, the comfort of knowing which drawer sticks, which pot boils too fast, which mistress watches everything, which one watches nothing that matters. Once a body is absorbed into daily labor, the rhythm of colonial life can finally slow enough for the story to become more sleep-like. Mornings begin early. Whistles or voices pull people from beds or mats before the air has decided whether it will be kind. Breakfast is quick, thin, practical. Work carries the day. Shade becomes a moral concept. Water is thought about constantly. By late afternoon, exhaustion becomes almost noble in its consistency. Then evening comes, and evening is where the script now needs to deepen to reach the target length properly. Evening in the colony is not freedom, but it is the hour in which a self can reassemble a little. Fires lit, pots simmering, boots off, shirts loosened, sore shoulders rolled. People compare the day in fragments. The road crew complain about stones. The shepherd complains about sheep. The kitchen worker complains about everything, including bread that still refuses to taste like home. Weak tea may appear, tobacco, if luck and vice cooperate. Someone tells a story. Someone else counters it with a worse one. The humor of exiles is one of the finest survival tools in the archive. Gardening is another key block from the source, and exactly the kind of sleep gold the brief asks us to use. A garden in a convict life is not simply food. It is delayed hope. You scratch a patch of earth into order, plant beans or onions or herbs, and wait. Waiting is difficult for anyone shaped by punishment, because punishment teaches that the future belongs to somebody else. Gardening challenges that lesson. It says there will be a later. A sprout means tomorrow exists. A surviving row means you had enough belief to put something into the ground, and enough patience not to tear it up in despair. Of course, the colony mocks optimism with its own local humor. Kangaroos with no respect for property, heat that withers, insects that investigate every leaf, soil that behaves differently than expected. A row of beans can feel like a personal contract with the universe until wildlife tears straight through it. Still, gardening remains intimate. The hands in the dirt, the eye for shade, the small victory of one healthy shoot. The quiet of evening after work spent checking leaves and muttering at pests. It is one of the most beautiful later loops in the source because it shows exile slowly turning into place. Social life grows around these routines. Meals shared, weak tea, gossip, complaints about officials, weather, animals, broken fences, poor flour, hard masters, or soft ones. Former bunkmates from the ship reappear in absurd new roles. The old rogue becomes a passable neighbor. The loud man becomes a tolerable gossip. The pickpocket becomes a useful messenger. The sharp-tongued woman becomes the colony's unofficial advisor on everything from seeds to courtship. Communities in such places are rarely elegant, but they are real. And real communities are built from repetition more than feeling. You see the same faces, trade the same jokes, borrow the same tools, rescue the same goats or children or pots from the same disasters, and one day realize you belong to the mess. Letters home extend that belonging across distance. The source mentions them late, and they matter. A transported person writing home is doing something almost miraculous, forcing the empire's enormous geography to pass through one human hand. What do you say? That the birds laugh, that the sun is rude, that the sea nearly killed you, that work is endless, that you have planted beans, that you are not dead, that some days are worse than others, and some are better than the court that sentenced you would have wanted. Letters can exaggerate suffering, soften it, invent triumph, conceal shame, or simply list practical facts because the real feelings are too large to fit on paper. But the act of writing is itself a claim. I remain someone who can tell my own story. Families, too, emerge in these margins, not always from romance in its polished sense, but from proximity, need, tenderness, and the simple human unwillingness to remain alone forever. Shared labor becomes shared meals become habits. Habits become households. A child born in the colony changes the moral gravity of a transported person's life. Now the future is not merely a sentence to survive. It is a small body needing bread, shade, shoes, jokes, names, and some account of where they belong. Punishment, which intended to erase lineage by removal, ends up creating new lines in the very place meant to hold the erased aid. This is where the closing drift of the whole script should live. Not in redemption, because the system does not deserve that kindness. Not in triumph, because too many suffered too much. But in continuation, in the awkward, stubborn fact that people learned birdsong, heat, bad soil, better soil, sheep temperaments, road dust, kitchen rhythms, the angle of colonial light, and the habits of one another. They built huts, then fences, then gardens, then maybe hopes. Small hopes, but durable ones. And if the colony remained harsh, the sentence remained harsh too. The people inside it were no longer only the people who boarded the ship. That is what I want to leave with tonight. Not the judge, though he matters. Not the spectacle of the courtroom, though it matters. Not the stench below deck, though it matters too. Not even the long sea, with its storms and buckets and impossible horizons. I want to leave you with persistence. Transportation to Australia was brutal, bureaucratic, theatrical, filthy, and often cruel in ways both public and intimate. It made small crimes carry giant distances. It turned hunger into exile. It converted ordinary people into cargo and labor. But the transported did not remain only sentences in ledgers. They became shipmates, workers, gardeners, parents, lovers, gossips, complainers, cooks, shepherds, road builders, neighbors, and the awkward early population of a colonial world. If sleep is already beginning to soften the sharper edges of your thoughts, you do not need to keep every stage of the journey. You can let the courtroom recede, let the gangplank quiet, let the lower deck darken, let the sea rock farther and farther away. Keep only the gentler echoes if they help. Rain on timber during a storm, lantern light on rough boards, the first white glare of land after months of grey water, the strange cry of a bird in a place once known only as punishment, the evening breath of a settlement at the far edge of empire, the murmur of tired people who have crossed farther than they ever meant to travel and are still, against every design, alive. And now even those images can begin to loosen. The ship empties, the shore fades to silhouette, the fire burns low, somewhere in an old record book. A transported name remains fixed in ink, but we do not need to follow it any farther tonight. We can leave the ledger to its dust, the empire to its paperwork, and the long water to the tide. The story does not need a hard conclusion. It can simply drift, wave after wave, distance in after distance, until the courtroom, the ship, the shoreline, the stars, and the long sentence itself all soften into stillness.